in lines 113 through 115, the vision of the storm, the vision of the disaster here that has befallen these ships really focuses in on one in particular. And so befittingly we have Unam to start the lines here. So upon one ship which was carrying the Lycians and faithful Orontes, before the eyes of the man himself, of the very man, i.e. Aeneas, a huge amount of water, a huge amount of the sea from its peak strikes. And that's very literal, and when you get to the end of that, you think strikes what? But remember that we had already completed the action here right away at that unam and pupim, and so in English, literally, it doesn't come across very well. But that's the literal translation. So let's clean that up a little bit. We have unam, one ship, and that is no surprise to our audience. We saw three here. We saw three earlier than that. This is the third element in that tripartite structure. Just as I have described in previous sections, this third part of the series is treated grammatically or presented to the audience a little bit differently than the previous two, which are a little bit more parallel. First it was trace, notice, etc., etc. Then up here it's trace, eurus, etc., etc. And then now we have unam, and then this relative clause, and then the rather convoluted word order. But we have the hyperbaton because unam refers all the way down to the pupim, even though we understand it as a ship as part of that series. And then immediately we describe which ship it is in particular, and I think that Virgil describes or chooses to describe this one ship as the Lycians because we had just talked about Sarpedon in Aeneas's lament earlier, where he says, "Oh, I wish I had died on the fields of Ilium." And where Hector lies now, and where Sarpedon lies. Remember, Sarpedon is the king of the Lycians. So I think it's a good callback, and I think these 2.5 lines here contain a lot of recalls, a lot of echoes of very personal references to Aeneas himself. And so here we have the ship that's carrying the Lycians, and then we have Orontes, who is faithful, trusty Orontes, the good epithet there for Aeneas' comrade. And then we have of the man himself, and this is very commonly used by Virgil and others as the leading man, the leading star, either of the scene or of the whole thing here. And so we must be talking about Aeneas. And this, again, is an echo of what we had earlier seen. So Aeneas wishes that he had died before the faces of his fathers. Here we have a ship before Aeneas's oculos, before Aeneas's eyes. Aeneas here is the father. He is the leader of the fleet, and he's watching his men be destroyed. So the tables are turned here. And this huge Pontus, this literally huge water, this huge sea, but we know it's a huge, massive sea from its peak. And then Ferret is again an echo of what we had seen earlier. Strikes, hits, beats, and then we have the synecdoche here. Pupim means the stern of a ship, and so it really stands for the whole ship itself.